Today we're going to talk about the very important but often overlooked process of validating your site. And what I mean by that is it's time for us to check your code. So why do we want to validate? I like to call browsers the helicopter parents of programming. So a lot of times you're going to be writing up your code and then you'll stop and you'll check and it looks great, and then you write some more code and you stop and you check and it looks great. And by the sheer fact that it looks so good, you assume you must be right. But the problem is browsers are programmed to kind of look for your errors and fix them. The problem with this is that not all browsers fix things the same way. It's also important to remember that not everyone is accessing your page with traditional browsers. So as your page becomes more complex, these little hidden problems, those hidden errors that the browsers are hiding can become devastating to people who are trying to access them with different software. So there are three approaches to validating your code for consistency. One is to validate what we call the URI or the URL. Another is to validate by your file name, which means instead of giving your URL, you can actually upload your file to check it. The third way is what I call by direct input. So let's go ahead and run through an example very quickly. And the site I'm going to use is called the validator. So if you check here, we can start off by going to the validator.w3.org. As you can remember, the W3 is really the association for trying to make sure that everyone sticks to the same standards. And here are three options. We can validate by URI, the validate by file upload, and the validate by direct input. Now, this is a somewhat important choice because for some of you, you may not decide to buy a hosting system, in which case you can't actually give it your URL. You can't type in c://. It just doesn't work when you put anything that's specific to your computer. So instead, I'm going to show you an example of validate by direct input. All right? So let's start by looking at the page we're going to validate. Over here, I have my little picture of Asheville with the beach. And as you can see, it looks pretty good. You don't see any problems with it as you kind of go back and forth. But let's see what happens when I actually grab all this code. So if you want the shortcut, this works for almost everyone. I'm going to go ahead and do Control-A and Control-C. Head back over here, and when I put it in and I click on check, once I start going down, you can see, oh, this looks good. Oh, right away it says, nope, you have an error. And the error is stray end tag, and that's for a section. In most cases, the validators can kind of give you a clue as to which line you messed up on. So let's go back and check the code. When I go over here and I go down to line 25, oops, go up a little bit here. Nope, still nothing there. Got really long lines. Oh, the validator was right. As you can see, I accidentally put section twice. What I really meant was to have an end section here and a beginning section here. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. I will save. I will grab it all again. And let's try it by putting in new input. I'm actually going to refresh. Go back here. And let's see if I have better luck this time. Good, good. No errors or warnings to show, and it's going to go ahead and put my page back out there. So this is really just the simplest way to go in and make sure that the syntax of your code is correct. Now, I kind of gave you a really simple example where I only had one error. What typically is going to happen is that it's going to generate lots and lots of errors. And what I want to happen is make sure that you don't freak out when you see all of them. The reason is because errors, what we call, is propagate. The checker gets confused. When you see one error at the top, it kind of leads to a whole bunch of errors. So what you want to do is you always want to fix the first error that the validator saw. Once you fix that, there's a really good chance that the 52 errors it detected has now dropped down to 12 or 11. Now, there's also the chance that once you fix one error, it's going to be able to see that you had 20 or 30 more. But again, work on it step by step. If the error that the validator gives you isn't as clear as the one that I just saw, what you can do is search online and in the different forums, because I can assure you that other people have seen the same errors before. So what you want to do right now, actually let's go back here, is let's go ahead and try validate file by URI. Pick your favorite site and go ahead and type it in. I'm going to go ahead and put in, not my own because I'm pretty sure it validates. I will put in http www.umsi.umich.edu. So my boss can get mad at me when I show his site potentially doesn't validate. Well, right away you can see that it's going to find a lot of errors. no matter what site you put in, particularly if it's a very popular site, you're going to see that there are a lot of errors and that the sites don't validate. Let's make sure your sites are better than theirs. So it's one thing to validate for what we call syntax. It's another question to validate for what we call accessibility. Again, we've talked about how important it is to make sure that your sites are accessible to the greatest number of people. So one of the places you can go to check that is wave.webaim.org. And it's a site for you to go and validate your accessibility. So let's take a look at that one again. I go up here and I go to wave.webaccessibility. What you need to do here is you can't upload your code by file or just by the code itself. You need to put in a URL. So I'm going to go ahead and go to that same one we did before, which was the beaches, and put it in here. And you can see I didn't get any errors, but I did get a couple of alerts. And the alerts were simply telling me that I'm not sure your alternative text is quite as good as it should be. And also another point is saying you have the same redundant link, which means you have the same link twice. So right now everything looks good as far as syntax and the very high level of accessibility for the semantics. So one of the nice things about the accessibility validation is that it gives you an idea of things that you hadn't really thought about before, but the downfall is that it only works on hosted pages. So validated sites are always more robust and more accessible than those sites that don't validate. So as a coder, it's your job to make sure that you go to these different validation sites and fix your code to be up to standards. If you're not coding, it's also important for you to visit the sites that you go to on a regular basis and go ahead and validate those. It's going to give you a real sense of the different ways people feel the importance or non-importance of making their sites accessible to everybody. Good luck. One of the things I'm really hoping that students will do is validate their code. You can validate it for syntax, but you can also validate it for accessibility. And so today, I'm going to show you how I use the Wave tool to test different sites. I went in and I checked to find some of the top 10 visited sites for 2018. And I found Google, Wikipedia, Reddit, Yahoo, and Amazon. So let's just do a little investigation to how well each of these sites addresses accessibility. There's two ways to test. One is to actually go to the Wave site, which is wave.webaim.org. From this site, you can actually copy and paste the address of any page you want to test. And this is a great way to do it. Personally, what I did is I went ahead and added the Wave extension to my page. So if you look right here, it's possible, if you own your computer, to download an extension that looks just like this over here. It's a little tiny W. And it makes my life a little bit easier because it lets me actually just click on this button rather than going to the Wave site. So let's go ahead and check out some of these sites. I'm going to start with Google. When I'm at Google, I'll click the Wave validator, and it's going to go through and check for any errors it might see. And in this case, we have 2 errors. And in both cases, the errors are that we have empty links. Somewhere on this page, there are links that don't really link to anything. Now, I'm trying to find them, and you can't see them on here, but that's because Wave checks for all the different variations of your page. So while it might look good on the desktop, it doesn't always look good on, say, your phone or a mobile tablet. Google did pretty well. Let's go ahead and check out Wikipedia. Here on Wikipedia, I'm going to wave it. Oh, sometimes it takes a second. I always forget, and I need to be really patient because if you click on it and then you click on it again too quickly, that's how you turn it on and off. So I clicked on Wave. I'm going to wait for the few more seconds, and you can see that once again, Wikipedia, like Google, did a pretty good job of addressing accessibility. They have one empty button and what they call missing form labels. What that means is down here, there's some place they would like us to type something in. But someone who is vision impaired might not know exactly what is it you want me to type in. So both of these little buttons right here say, you know what? It would be a really good idea if you would add a form label so somebody knows what it is they're typing in. the form label here might be search query, and the form label on this blue button might be hit me to perform search. Still, 3 is really good. So let's go to Reddit. Reddit is a very popular site. A lot of people use it to feel better about themselves because they think, who would ask that question? And other people go here for real reasons to find out information. It's such a popular site, I'm really hoping it'll be accessible. But according to Wave, on their last kind of rendition, Reddit had, let's take a look. All right, and from here we can see that Reddit has 73 errors. Not surprisingly, because there's so much user-driven content. There's a lot of people uploading pictures or typing things in, and they don't know about accessibility. They don't know about things like, wow, I should really be adding my alt text to these different images. Otherwise, it's going to be hard for people to access them. Or you can look down here. In fact, that's exactly what it is. It's missing alternative text here. Oops. Missing alternative text here, missing alternative text. Lots and lots of missing alternative text. The other thing that Wave really tries to get people to avoid doing is having empty links. This idea of links that you don't know where they're going. And they also really don't like redundant links. It just makes it hard for people who are using the computer via a keyboard to have to click so many times to just get to the same information over and over again. So unfortunately, Reddit not great for accessibility, but really good for my example here in this video on checking your pages. The next one I'm going to do is, it just said Yahoo in general, so I picked Yahoo Sports. We can take a look and see how this sports site is going. Now, unlike Reddit, this is, professionally commercial software system where it's people who are being paid to upload the content. So we'll hope that there's a little bit more accessibility here. So here on Yahoo Sports, you can see that I've got 44 errors. So let's go ahead and just kind of take a look at what general things they're missing. Well, it's alternative text, which is kind of funny. If you look at it, you can see that they're saying, ooh, lots of places you're missing alternative text. And that must mean right here, each one of these little scores, it's not text, it's actually an image. And this gets people into a lot of trouble. Sometimes you want to put an image up on the screen and it's really not decorative, it's telling a complete story. And in that case, alternative text is so important. Otherwise, people with vision impairment may not be able to see what the score is for the various games. All right, the last one I'm going to do is Amazon. And I think I'll do that one straight from the Wave tool. So I go here, and I typed in Amazon.com. Oh, and Amazon is not doing too badly. You can see they have the same problems that most people do. It always comes down to this missing alternative text right there. There's a few reasons for this. On some sites, it's, the public is uploading the pictures and they don't know about alternative text, and so we have to educate them about it. Sometimes it's because we've written programs to update the sites. And unfortunately, computers aren't very good at knowing what alternative text they should add to pictures. Unfortunately, it's also because some people do know and they just don't really care or think it's that important. So as much as possible, I want you to add syntactic and semantic clues to all your code. Make sure people who are looking at it or listening to it have the greatest possible experience. One of the other accessibility tools that I've recently come across is called FUNKIFY. FUNKIFY is another extension that you add onto your browser to let you experience visiting pages in a whole different light. So here I am back at wikipedia.org. Earlier in another class I showed that putting it through the Wave validator shows that Wikipedia has really done a pretty good job of making sure their site's accessible. So let's try the FUNKIFY tool. How FUNKIFY works is it lets you take on different personas to try to see what the site would look like for different people. So for instance, if I were to turn on Blurry Bianca, you basically get to experience this page as if you had blurry vision. You can even change the intensity of like the blurriness, if that's a word, to have it go from pretty low to pretty high. There's dyslexia, which I think is personally quite interesting because I know so many kids who struggle with, and adults who struggle with the idea that on a web page, oftentimes things are moving around much more quickly, the videos and the pictures, but not just that, the text has a way for moving around with them. You can't solve that problem, but what you can do is make sure that you're using large enough font so that if things do move around, it's not too disorienting. You can always also make sure that your spelling and grammar is correct. That will help as well. All right. The next one is Trembling Trevor, and this one's quite common for people who maybe have a little bit of trouble with a mouse or with a keyboard or different things that need a lot of dexterity. So I'm going to click on this one, and then I'm going to click over here, if I can. And you can see with Trembling Trevor, as I'm trying to move the mouse around, it doesn't move very easily for me. It kind of jumps and goes. I fall victim to this a lot of times myself when people have very tiny buttons to push. So I'm going to turn off Trembling Trevor here. And you can add, kind of increase or decrease the amount of trembling. Tunnel Toby. This is the idea that some people actually, their partial vision loss would look something like this. So this is a pretty high amount of vision loss. You can change it and kind of get this idea of what people are seeing. They might only be seeing a very small amount of your screen. Peripheral vision is this idea that sometimes people have this one spot that's kind of blocked. So again, you can't fix this issue for people, but you can think about your page and you can say, hey, is there something on my page that's really important, like just so important, and it only appears in one spot? Do I want to put it in more? Color Carl is pretty common. This is just the idea that how does your page look if we were to get rid of all the colors? Are you using color? Let's go ahead and do this one. So this is grayscale. I'm going to kind of click in here. You can also look at green, kind of take away a lot of the green. You've got the red and green, the blue and yellow, and they include some statistics that basically 1 in 1,000 people have trouble with this color combination, or 1 in 100 men or 1 in 300 women have problem with the red-green. So testing your site to make sure that color isn't conveying something important. Then they also included some where it's a combination of lowered vision and trembling hands. The last one I kind of like right here is the Sunshine Sue. This is accessibility kind of even more for the accessibility for everyone, because so many people take their devices outside. You can say, oh, hey, if it's really bright outside, are people going to be able to see what's on my screen? Or should I be changing some of my color combinations and contrast? So FUNKIFY is, I hate to say it's a fun little tool because there's nothing funny about people not being able to access your page. But they did do a good job of trying to explain how these different types of abilities can come in and affect the way that people interact with your page. So if you're interested in accessibility and you want to go a step further to make sure your page is something that everyone can enjoy, I highly recommend you installing FUNKIFY.